Good morning. Good morning. How the devil are we all doing this fine day? I am going to stop this very quickly. Every morning, I know most of you can't see it because it's over yonder on Instagram. Every morning when I say good morning to Instagram, I always ask the question, where are you watching from? And we've just had somebody called Dunala Kelly 225 saying, Salut, comment vas-tu? Je suis en Côte d'Ivoire. They are watching from Côte d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, all the way down in Africa. Good morning. Bonjour. Bonsoir. And stuff. Good morning, everyone. How on earth are we doing? Happy Hump Day, as Dan Cullen said just before we got the show on the road, I think. Where is it? There it is. Yeah, Dan is in the house, and Dan is doing very, very well at the moment on the Mystery Machine, which we'll be getting to in the not too distant future. Who else do we have here? Gary Muirhead is here as well. Mark Whiting is here. We've already done Dan Cullen, but he does say Happy Hump Day. So yes, that's about the size of it. Going to be talking later in the show, sort of after the show-ish, about industry inefficiency. So if you've got any examples, and I'm going to flag this up again in a little bit, but if you've got any examples of where companies, not necessarily yours, but companies in the construction and demolition industry are wasting money, wasting time, wasting effort. If you've got any examples of that, I'd love to hear from you. While you're thinking about that, I'm going to say very quick good morning to Messrs. Hatcher and Turner. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Lots to get through today, so without further ado, I'm going to roll the intro and get this show on the road. Need to press one of these buttons. This one here, I think. So very quick good morning to Mr. Chris Ford. Morning, shiny, happy people. Shiny, happy people holding hands, as the song goes. Yes, Chris was emerged victorious yesterday on our Mystery Machine. I'm going to get to that in just a moment. In fact, almost immediately, but it is Wednesday, the 7th of August. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition. In today's show, we're going to go back and revisit the Volvo days. Got a new film to show you on that. How the Little Dipper is advancing mine efficiency. We're traveling back in time to check out a Ford P48 excavator in action. Yes, a Ford. Yes, back in the days when Ford made diggers. And if you can't see the wood for the trees, we have just the attachment you need. Plus, as I've already said, I do want to throw this up. I'll go back to the chat in a second. In the news discussion portion of the show, we'll be looking at the countless construction insolvencies, the recent spate of financial losses, and we're going to be asking, where is all the money going? I want to give you a quick heads up on that one. I personally believe that the UK demolition and construction industry is beset with all kinds of inefficiencies that are costing the sector an absolute fortune in wasted time and money. So between now and the end of the show, I'd love to hear from you. Examples from the coal face, as it were, of wasted time and money. Dan Cullen reckons I called Ken Hatcher Mrs. Hatcher. I didn't. I said Messrs. Thanks, Jim. Messrs. Hatcher and Turner. Yes, plural for Misters. Yes, it is indeed. Thank you for clarifying. Yes, maybe my fancy talk is a bit too much for this time of the morning. But yes, I definitely didn't call Ken Hatcher Mrs. Hatcher. I mean, I do sometimes, but not on screen. So, Mystery Machine time it is. So let me show you what it is that you have to work with. Now, just while we're gearing this up, I have noticed there's no sign of Steve Williamson here as yet. Obviously, he was the runaway winner of last month's Mystery Machine League table. No sign of him this morning, and he's yet to get a point on the board. So while while he's absent, let's see if we can get somebody to identify this. There you are. That's what you're working with. Now, obviously, yesterday's machine was from way back when. Today's machine, bit more up to date. If you've got any clues on what that might be, I'd love to hear from you. Just need a make and a model over in the chat. I'll leave it on the screen for just a little bit longer so you can squint a bit and see if you can see a bit more. I think there's probably, let me think, there are 6 more reveals to do on that before I tell you exactly what it is. So keep those guesses coming in. While you're doing that, I'm going to take that away, and I'm going to remind you that it is the latest round of our Excavator World Cup. Yes, our latest match is between these two. Kato on the left in the red corner. There isn't a red corner, but you get my idea. And Volvo, who are on the right and in the blue corner. So, same as usual. You've got 100,000 imaginary pounds, and you are going to buy yourself 1 or more excavators. Are you going Kato or are you going Volvo? Just type Kato or Volvo in the chat. Now, I personally think this is going to be a very, very one-sided battle. But then I thought that about the last couple, and I've been proven wrong. So keep those keep those votes coming in. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to go back to the mystery machine very quickly. Hot off the mark, it's Jim Turner, who reckons it could be a Kobelco 16-tonner. It is not one of those. I'll take that away, and I'll show you a smidgen more. There you are. That's what you're dealing with. And I can tell you over on the Excavator World Cup, we've already had a vote in for Volvo. Anybody else got any thoughts? Would you go Volvo or would you go Kato if money were no object, or if the money belonged to somebody else? I'd love to hear from you. We'll revisit both of those in the fullness of time. But we do need to get on with the show. Ken Hatcher is saying the mystery machine, that's a cat cab. Not, you know. It's not. Yes, this is more or less how I expected things to go on our World Cup. We've had what we had: a Mark Whiting with a Volvo, Ken Hatcher with Volvo, Gary Muirhead, Volvo, of course. Yes, absolutely. And there you are. Footy. Morning, Footy. Haven't seen you for a while. Good morning, everyone. If money was no object, Volvo every time. Yes, indeed. Kind of way I was expecting it all to turn out. So let me take that away for a moment. We'll come back to that a little bit later in the show, because we're going to start the show right now. And fun enough, we've been talking about Volvo. They're up next. Now, a couple of things. Obviously, I attended with Fred. I attended the Volvo days up in Eskilstuna in Sweden. Fantastic event, absolutely first class. Volvo were fantastic. The new machine was equally fantastic. No complaints whatsoever. Well, 2 minor gripes. First of all, we only got about 3/4 of a day to actually play with the machines. I'd have loved 3 days. And I understand the reasons why they didn't do that. The other thing is, when we are in a grandstand, we tend to watch the machines much the same as you. You see me from this angle. I saw the machines from this angle. Volvo themselves have produced a new film on the Volvo days with multi-angles. Have a look at this. And even that doesn't quite do it justice. It was a fantastic event. Congratulations to Volvo on pulling that off. Lord alone knows how many people they put through their paces on that, because it went on for weeks and weeks and weeks. But yeah, absolutely fantastic. Mike Wolf was there at the same time as me. He says, this looks familiar. It certainly does. I'd go back today. Happily go back to Eskilstuna, because I missed out on the cinnamon buns while I was there. Don't know what I was playing at. Mick Norton says, what are Volvo trying to prove by showing an ADT, putting it on 3 wheels while powering down on the skip with a 360? Pointless. Pointless from a practical standpoint, but it has become a bit of a mainstay. Pretty much, I think the last 2 Volvo days I've been to, I've seen Volvo do it. I also saw them do it at a Bauma, possibly an Intermat as well. It's kind of their shtick. It is kind of their shtick. I'm going to take this away because the mystery machine is obviously got people stumped this morning, because not only has nobody got it yet, nobody's even got the right make yet. I'm going to go back to Gary Muirhead, who reckons it could be a Hydromech HMK 640 WL. It is not one of those. Dan Cullen reckons it could be a Hyundai HW100A. It's not. He also reckons it could well be an Hitachi 140W-6. He's sticking with Hitachi. He reckons it could be a ZX95W-7. It's not. It's not an O&K L45C either. It's not, as Chris Ford reckons, a JCB 457, and it's not, as Dan Cullen has just said, a Doosan or a Devellon DX57W. Gary Muirhead, it's not an L507 stereo. It's none of those things. Good morning to Alex Latham, by the way. Let me show you a bit more, because I've clearly got you stumped this morning. That's not really helping you a great deal, is it? Could this possibly be my first 3 points on the board this month? Could it be? We shall see. And take it away for the time being, because I do need to crack on, and we're going to be mulching in a second.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
If you watch this show with any regularity, you'll be familiar with the name Prinoth. I'm not entirely sure where they come from, but they make those weird and wonderful machines that landscape ski slopes and the like. They do more than that. They also do this. That takes no prisoners, does it? I'm going to go over to the mystery machine again, because Dan Cullen reckons it could be a case 812G. It is not. Gary Muirhead, also getting the case vibes, reckons it could be a case 321F. However, look who's just arrived. The reigning champion, Steve Williamson, has just arrived. As they say in the movies, shit just got real. Steve, can you identify that machine, what I am showing on the screen now? Here's a little bit more to be going on with. Does that help at all? I can see what it is because I've got it written down in front of me, but still literally haven't even had the right make suggested yet. So if you've got any suggestions on that, I'd love to hear from you. And also, given that Steve's just arrived, and I think we had some other late arrivals as well, that is our Excavator World Championship. I need you to vote for either Kato or Volvo. Both ending O, markedly different though, I would say. Kato or Volvo. You've got 100,000 quid of somebody else's money to spend. Are you going Kato? Are you going Volvo? Please let us have your thoughts. Going back to the mystery machine, because Gary Muirhead has ditched Case and has now decided it could be a Komatsu WA200-8. It's not a Komatsu either. Not a Komatsu of any shape or form. It's not a Case of any shape or form. Not a Liebherr either. Keep the guesses coming. Have I got you stumped? Be interesting to see. While you're figuring that out, I do need to get on with a bit of this. You will have heard, of course, of the Big Dipper, either the constellation in the skies or the funfair ride. Have you ever heard of the Little Dipper? No? Here it is.
This is a meaningful research. We know that the outcome is actually being used by someone immediately.
The Dipper is an exciting step in being able to fully automate the drill and blast process. This helps us keep our people safe from harm while improving outcomes.
Dipper is the robot that primarily dips the holes on the blast pattern. It sends a sonde which carries a few sensors down the hole. The sensors will capture some data from the hole. As the sensor goes all the way down the hole, we measure the depth of the hole. This information is primarily used by the blast team. The weaker and the stronger blasts can affect the fragmentation of the material. Optimized fragmentation is very important.
Because of the improved fragmentation, we have a better product going into our crusher plant, giving us a better fines and lump material to then on ship to port.
By enabling the collection of more detailed data from every blast hole, we'll be better positioned to optimize every step in the drill and blast process. Eventually, the automation will allow for a more cohesive process. This will mean maximizing ore recovery.
Behind me, you can see the operation of the robotic dipper, running trials on its GPS, cross-referencing its software data to ensure that they are getting the same results as we are getting in the manual process. The trial so far has exceeded expectations. The University of Sydney team is very passionate on finding success for Rio Tinto. They exceeded what they thought that they would be able to do, providing an excellent service for us.
University partnerships allow Rio Tinto to work with some of the brightest minds on the planet, allowing us to develop technology such as the Dipper and also develop our fundamental understanding of the science behind a lot of our operations and processes.
Me and the rest of team members are very proud that this project has been so successful. We have a lot of energy to convert this prototype to an actual product for Rio Tinto.
Can't tell if that was made of Meccano or something based on something out of Thunderbirds from way back when. The mystery machine is still causing some consternation, I can tell you. Let's have a look. Who else do we have here? Dan Cullen has gone for the Atlas AR45. It's not one of those. Gary Muirhead reckons it could be a Volvo L10H. It's not. He also reckons it could be a Bobcat L95 or a Devellon DL60-7. It is none of those. Still, nobody has got the right make. Let me show you a bit more. Yeah. Is that a clue? Is that a clue? Could be. Could be. Keep the guesses coming in. I'll revert to that in just a moment. Jim Turner, I'm going to throw that off the screen for a second because Jim Turner has something to say. That's a great way to make progress. Team up with the universities and get a fresh perspective from the up-and-coming kids. Yeah, absolutely. And also at the same time, give the kids a bit of a flavour for mining, construction, demolition, whatever it is that they're working on. Absolutely fantastic idea. Totally agree with that. Dan Calleran reckons our mystery machine could be a Kubota RO85. It is not. It is not. We've only got one film left. I'm starting to eye the prize. So if you've got any more guesses on that, that is our mystery machine as it stands today. I'll be right back after this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Those of you of a certain age might remember there was a time when Ford, you know, the car company, when they used to make diggers. Yeah, they really did. I know certain people definitely remember that because Gary Muirhead sent me a photograph of a Ford excavator just a few days ago, which actually sent me off to try and find some footage if I could. And I managed to find some. Obviously, this is a more recent film because I don't think Ford has been in the business for best part of 40 years. However, some of their machines are still turning a track. I'll get to Ken Hatcher's comment in just a moment because I think I'm answering it in this. For those of you that don't know, Ford Construction Equipment can trace its history back as far as the 1930s when it produced an excavator based on its Model F tractor. During the 1960s, Ford skid units, bizarrely, Ford skid units were actually used in the production of JCB 3C excavators. However, when Ford moved production to Dagenham, JCB switched to supply to Nuffield before ultimately moving to Perkins engines and building their own transmissions rather than using skid units. During the 1970s, Ford excavators were sourced from Richier in France. In fact, the machines were sold under the Richier name in France, only in France, and as Ford across the rest of the world. The Ford Motor Company eventually, this is the bit that Ken was referring to, the Ford Motor Company eventually divested its tractor division and construction machinery to Fiat under the New Holland name in the early 1990s. So in answer to, I got my timing wrong, Ford backhoe is okay. Is it the New Holland now? Yes, it is. Although 30 years on, I don't suppose there's a huge amount of Ford left in it. But there you are. The mighty Ford was once in the digger business. Now, all of that has delayed things somewhat, but I can tell you that nobody today has got the mystery machine. Coming in just under the wire, Dan Cullen got close-ish, but I can tell you I'm claiming this one because the machine in question is that. That right there is the Yanmar V8E. That's an electric machine. I can see Dan Cullen came up with a V100. You're in the ballpark, Dan, but didn't quite get there. So I'm going to have that. I'm going to claim that one for myself. And I can tell you ahead of time, tomorrow's machine is a wee bit older. We do need to go back to the mystery machine, not the mystery machine, the Excavator World Cup. I've already done the votes, counted those up. The third round of our Excavator World Cup competition pitted Volvo against Kato. But which brand came out on top? Well, we put it to the public vote, and I can tell you that the winner is Volvo. Volvo goes forward to the second round, while sadly, Kato leaves empty-handed. Tomorrow's match is another biggie as Liebherr goes head-to-head with Sumitomo. So make sure you tune in and take part. In actual fact, we've had another vote coming in there for Volvo. No great surprise. No great surprise at all. I mentioned this yesterday, and I'm going to say it again. I'm kind of changing the ending a little bit of the show. So rather than messing about with the crack, because we've already been through all of the bits and pieces in the chat, and rather than messing about with MB Crusher, I'm going to go straight into the news discussion part. A week or two ago, we reported on the fact that it costs more to build in the UK than anywhere else in the world. It was a subject that we kicked around amongst ourselves for the best part of an hour, but the one thing we didn't do was figure out why. So I thought it was high time that we looked at that. Now, first and foremost, it's worth remembering that the construction sector currently sits at the very top of the company insolvency league table. In fact, the sector accounts for almost 18% of all company insolvencies in the UK. In the year to May 2024, we'd said goodbye to 4,287 individual companies that had each succumbed to economic and financial losses. So the money's not going there, but it doesn't end there. In the past few weeks, Sir Robert McAlpine has reported a loss of £110 million. French contractor Bouygues saw its losses widen to £62 million. BAM Construction has warned of a substantial loss this year, and there is widespread talk that Lend-Lease will actually leave the UK market entirely. Now, it's tempting to suggest that all the money is being spirited away by industry fat cats and their cigar-smoking, Bentley-driving lifestyles. But while we do have a few of those in the sector, we all know that that's surely unsustainable. Company shareholders will only defer their dividends for so long. And if they believe that the company money is being used to fund a director's excessive lifestyle, the chances are that director will soon be seeking alternative employment. All of which begs the question, where is all the money going? Now, my own personal feeling is that a significant part of it leaks out of the sector through nothing more than gross inefficiency. Whenever the industry enjoys a period of boom, there's always a lot of talk about fixing the roof while the sun is shining. But when the bust inevitably follows, it becomes clear that the rain is now pissing through the roof and soaking all of those below. Just think about it from the experiences of viewers on this show. On numerous occasions, we've had audience members arrive for work only to be told that their presence is not actually required. After a lot of fuss and negotiation, they're generally paid a day's wages, even though they didn't actually do any work. They deserve that money for having turned up. But that cost could have been saved if anyone, had taken the time to make a phone call. Speaking of wages, how many of you are feeling flush at the moment? My guess is probably not that many. Yes, you may have seen a wage increase in the past few years, but A, it's barely kept pace with the cost of living, and B, no wage increase would have been enough to send an employer to the wall. Truth is, you only get a pay rise if a company can afford it. If your employer is making a loss or is about to go under, you can generally whistle for any wage increase. Along similar lines, agency workers. Over the past decade or more, demolition and construction companies have done their level best to get staff off their books so they can better ride the waves of demand. Yes, they can now pick up staff and put them down as they see fit. No, they don't have to worry about sick pay and holiday pay. But how much are they paying for the privilege? Agencies have to make money somewhere, and that somewhere is the differential between how much they are paid by the companies and how much they ultimately pay the guys and girls doing the work. What about equipment? How much equipment is sat on sites up and down the country right now, just in case? Hasn't turned a wheel or a track in weeks or even months, but it sits there on the off chance that it might be required. There is a daily, weekly, and monthly rental cost against that machine. Now, taken individually, the odd failure to off-hire men or machines doesn't seem like a big deal, but there are more than 3 million people working in this sector. Lord alone knows how many machines. You extrapolate those figures out, and it's easy to see where a big pot of money is going to waste. What about getting even closer to home? My dad was a trained carpenter. One of his favourite expressions was measure twice, cut once. In woodworking, that saves you time and quite possibly saves you cutting too much and then having to start again with a fresh and costly piece of timber. In construction circles, we now have technology that doesn't just measure once or even twice. It measures constantly. We have systems that ensure that we will never dig too much or too little, saving reworking, and Lord alone knows how much time, fuel, and wages. And yet there are still large parts of the industry that look at systems like that and go, nah, bits of string were good enough for my dad and they're good enough for me. Back to my earlier point about fixing the roof while the sun is shining. Now is probably not the time. Judging by the number of insolvencies and financial losses we're currently experiencing, I would say that we currently have more holes in the roof than we have actual roof. But ours is a cyclical industry. Each trough is followed by a peak, each bust begats a boom. As sure as eggs is eggs, there will come a time when we have an opportunity to take a big step backwards, analyse and fix the inefficiencies that plague the sector. Whether or not we take that opportunity, however, remains to be seen. I'm going to throw over to the chat, see what you're all saying about that. Let's have a look. I'm going to resolve this one very quickly. Volvo, Fiat seem to be in collaboration with lots of manufacturers: Fiat Hitachi, Fiat Cabelco, Fiat Atlas, Fat Alice, as we used to call it. Yeah, absolutely. Let's have a look. Dan, come back to work now. Busy day filling this hole. Have a great day, guys. Stay safe. Steve Williamson says it's one thing I can't complain: being on the books and get an hourly rate, a great hourly rate, like agency level wages. But you're working a machine with a tilt rotator and GPS, and it's never stopped. I have no qualms about people getting a fair day's wages. I think that should be the default. That people should absolutely get a fair amount of pay. But where is all the money going? Let's have a look. Dan Cullen says there's a few machines sitting at HS2 not turned a wheel. I bet there is. And how many machines were bought ahead of the next section of the HS2? What happens to them now? Do they go back to the dealer and the owner of those machines, the current owner of those machines, takes an enormous financial hit? Do they go to auction? They take a financial hit again. Jim Turner says, I would be flush if it wasn't for my playboy lifestyle of slow diggers and old wood. I'm not even going to comment on that. Hence why GPS will save you time and money. I understand the reluctance from a cost. I mean, a proper GPS tilt rotator and all, it comes at a cost, and a fairly hefty cost, no question about it. But if you were to look at that over the lifetime, and frankly, things like the GPS systems, yes, they are electronic, but modern electronics don't really go wrong. There's no moving parts; they don't go wrong. So you're investing in that. That GPS system could quite easily outlive the machine upon which it's mounted, and go on to the next machine. You think about all of the reworking that has saved. You only dig to grade. You only dig where you need to dig. You don't over dig. You don't under dig. You're not wasting fuel. You're not wasting the wages of the guy sat behind the levers. You're doing it once, knowing full well that you have done it accurately and that you have recorded that. So if there is any queries, stewards' inquiries later in the day, you can say, "No, I've got a bit of data here. I did my job. Absolutely spot on." Let's have a look. Mick Norton says the MD of Persimmon Homes received a £501,175 salary for 2023-24. That's why the roof needs fixing. Greed. Yeah. Chris Ford says, Jim, if it's got wheels, tits, or tracks, it's going to cost you money. There's a rule to live by. There is a rule to live by. Going back to the HS2 machines, they go back to the dealer, but the dealer is not going to pay full whack for them, are they? They might take them as a buyback, but they will. There is money will be lost there. Dan also says HS2 is the biggest waste of money as there is 6 different trades to Birmingham. HS2 only saves 10 minutes. It was HS2 has way exceeded the original price that was quoted for it. Can't argue with that. What I will argue with, though, is the fact that it wasn't about speed. It was never about speed. It was about capacity. There are not enough spaces on trains at the moment, and obviously London to Birmingham, we will ultimately have that space because of HS2, but going beyond that, we won't. I wonder how much compensation bill will be for the cancellation of HS2. Well, I mean, we reported this a couple of weeks ago. I think the bill to just close the sites that were never going to open, 100 million quid. I've heard figures of 2 billion of wasted money. 2 billion off the construction industry's income. Wasting taxpayers' money could well be, but this is not unique to major projects. I wonder how many smaller projects, how many house building projects are wasting. I mean, I do remember having this discussion years and years ago, long before I started doing this show, talking about a demolition contractor will look at a building and think, how much of that can I recoup? How many bricks, how many bits of timber, how much glass, how much plastic? And they're calculating in their head exactly where all those materials are going to be resold, reused, repurposed, recycled. I was always told that the construction industry doesn't look at it like that. So if you're looking at a house, and I don't know how many bricks go into a house, that's not really my game, but let's say there's 5,000 bricks go into a little house. You would think, well, we'll order 5,000, but they don't. They order 6,000. Now, okay, you will have some breakages along the way. You'll have a couple of faulty bricks in there. So, I understand the idea of over-ordering. But what happens to those bricks once the job is done, once that house is built? By and large, certainly in the past, they went in a skip. Brand spanking new, there is a value to each of those bricks, and a demolition contractor will cling on to every bit of value that they can, whereas construction companies, certainly in my experience, are just get rid. Rather than taking them back, storing them somewhere, and waiting until the next project came along, and yes, they might use different bricks, but really, it just seems like wastage. This tilt rotator is from the old machine, 7,500 hours on it, and the GPS is off the old machine as well. Yeah, there you are. So 2 lives out of a tilt rotator and a GPS system. So, I mean, I don't know how much that will have cost, but when you think about that, if you're getting 2 uses, possibly even more than that, you're getting that many uses out of it, the damn thing's going to be paying for itself in the first year or so, after which, pure bunts. Pure bunts. Dan Cullen says all they had to do was to add more carriages. I'm sure somebody must have thought of that. Who actually owns the properties that were bought on for the HS2 project, and are they going to be sold off at a knockdown price? Well, HS2, as it stands at the moment, HS2 certainly own those properties, no question about it. But typically, when somebody makes a compulsory purchase order, they are not legally, but they are kind of morally bound to pay over the odds. So, if there was £100,000 house on the route and they wanted it, chances are they may have paid 110, 120,000. So they're paying above market value. If they're now selling it at market value, each one of those houses, on average, is going to cost them 10, 20,000 quid. More wasted money. Jim Turner said, if it's about capacity, then put more trains on or have longer trains. That money could have gone on hospitals, prisons, doctors' surgeries, dentists, the police, fire brigade, air ambulances. The list goes on. And I totally agree with that. Totally agree with that. I kind of sit on the fence a bit with HS2, purely because it did potentially promise lots of employment, lots of work, lots of apprenticeships, lots of training opportunities. You take those away, which ultimately Mr. Sunak did, and you start to look at it and say, was that really worthwhile? Now, going back to the discussion we had Monday, I think, one of the things that I have an issue with, now, additional trains, longer trains, additional carriages and all that might fix the problem for today. It might fix the problem for next year. It could fix the problem for 5 years hence. But whereas, I use the Victorians as an example, whereas we're riding around on horses and carts, but sooner or later that won't be feasible in London. Let's build an underground system. Nobody's ever done that before. Don't care. Let's do it. Let's crack on and let's future-proof our nation's capital. That's what the Victorians done. Instead of which, today we pussyfoot around. Labour plan to build 1.5 million new homes with house builders standing to gain 69 grand profit on each of those new houses. All very true. All very true. And yet, just going back to HS2, bearing in mind, I can't actually remember the figures and I don't have them to hand, but yeah, I mean, I think the cost of HS2 from the moment that it received royal assent to today has probably pretty much doubled in price. And yet some of the companies that were involved in that are not exactly in clover financially. This point here, 1.5 million new homes, house builders stand to gain 69 grand profit. You think of all the house builders, for 5, 6, 7 years, house builders were basically propping up the entire construction industry. But a year, 2 years ago, the arse fell out of the house building market, and all of a sudden you've got major house builders who are struggling financially. I don't think that justifies them charging a 69 grand profit on each of those, but even then, can we say hand on heart that if, I don't know, Persimmon and Barrett and Waits, if all of those major house builders get that level of profit, can you say hand on heart that they'll be here in 5 years' time? 4 years' time, by the time we get to the next general election, will we have lost more house builders? My guess is, yeah, we probably will, almost certainly. And going back to all things demolition, obviously there was a spate of demolition insolvencies at the turn of the year. There's another one. I've already been given the heads up by 2 different people on another one that's just about to go pop now. I'm just basically waiting on confirmation of it. This isn't a thing that's gone away. Jim Turner says, HS2, as always said from the start, a massive land grab, and they'll build on it and claim they're doing everyone a favour by building us out of recession when they really screwed the landowners over. It's communism creeping in the back door, and it fucking stinks. Hate the idea of communism sneaking. I don't like the idea of anything sneaking in my back door, but that's a whole other story. Gary Muirhead says, I blame a lot of it on bad management on site. So do I. I've been on jobs where I've been asked to smash up perfectly good materials because they were double ordered or don't need them. It's cheaper to dump them than transport them to another site. Crazy. Yeah. And bearing in mind, and Gary, I'm not going to ask you to name names here, but bearing in mind, we have these major companies, major construction companies in particular, who will, once, twice, 10 times a year, will take to social media and proclaim loudly their commitment to all things environmental. Yes, we are heading towards zero emissions. We're on the route to zero, and we are sustainable, and we're exploring this and we're exploring that, and we're doing. In actual fact, behind the scenes, what they're actually doing is they're taking a bunch of materials, looking at them, thinking, well, we could reuse them, but it means moving them from one place to another. Fuck it, throw them in the skip. That's what they're actually doing. Dan Cullen, that's because of developers holding back on payments. Mortgage rates are a big cause of this. Mick Norton says in 2019, HS2 between London and Birmingham was costed between 49 and 56 billion pounds. I don't know what the bill stands at now. But yeah, as I say, it's got bigger and it's got bigger and it's got bigger. Demolition Engineer. I don't know who Demolition Engineer is, but they've just waved, so I'm waving back. Good morning, Demolition Engineer. Who are you really? What's your real name? That's what I'd like to know. Whereabouts in the world are you? I'd like to know that as well. Goes back to something that we discussed a while back on major public projects, and the difference between how a private individual or a private company would deal with increasing costs, as opposed to how the government or a local authority deals with those things. I'll use the example again. If I wanted a wall built at the end of my drive and somebody said it was £1,000, they'd get £1,000. They wouldn't get 3,000 quid because they suddenly discovered that there was more to be. No, I've got a piece of paper. It says you were going to do it for £1,000. £1,000, that's all you're getting. Yeah, piss off. Government doesn't do that. Local authorities don't seem to do that. Jim Turner, fantastic point. There is no on-site management anymore. They're just puppets that put there to check folk in and check out the gate. Even the list of decisions have to go back to head office nowadays. Yeah. We seem to have gone from management and management as a verb, management as in managing. That it's not a job title. It's actually a task. You actually manage. You manage the materials. You manage the equipment. You manage the people. You've got your finger on multiple pulses, and you are actively managing. We need more bricks. We need less bricks. We need another dumper for tomorrow afternoon, whatever it might be. We've gone from that to, as far as I can see, we've now got monitors. Remember milk monitors at school? We've got those. Rather than actively saying we need 4 of those and 5 of those, we've already got 3 of those, so we only need 2. Rather than that, they now just monitor. Is everybody on site? Yes. Is all the equipment here? Yes. Have we done the health and safety inspection? Yes. Have we done our toolbox talk? Yes. That's it. That's what they do. Steve Williamson says, when things go well, they take all the credit. When the shit goes bad, they blame everyone else. And again, I think that's one of the things that we've lost. I always fall back on analogies, generally football-based ones. If you have a series of bad results in football, it's the manager in the firing line. I can't remember a player being fired. Sometimes they're sold, but I can't remember a player being fired for failure in their specific position. But I've seen managers fired time and time and time again. So you've now got, as far as I can see, and based on what you're saying here, you've got the workers, you've got a monitor who doesn't actually have any power, and then you've got head office. So when things are going tits up, when they are going awry, when, as Steve puts it, when shit goes bad, who carries the can for that? Seriously, who carries the can? Are they firing workers? Are they laying off workers? Or are they questioning the monitor? Or are they just ticking, we'll put that down to experience and we'll try not to do that again? Gary Muirhead says it goes back to the old underprice, underpriced the contract to get the job, and at the end of the job, put in massive claims for extras. Have these people never heard of caps? I'm not talking about this fine specimen here. I'm talking about caps. Surely? How much is that brick wall going to cost in my front garden? £1,000, but the price of bricks fluctuate. All right, shall we agree on £1,100, but cap it at that? All right. It's not hard, is it? It's not hard. And all of these things, regardless of the scale of actual construction, all of it is just building a brick wall, but bigger. Building the London Stadium, building the new Wembley Stadium, building the M40 motorway, building the Channel Tunnel, building the London Olympic Park, building HS2, building Hinkley Point. All of those are just construction projects, but massive. Why is it when things get big, the management of those doesn't get big with them? If anything, the mismanagement seems to get bigger with them. I don't understand that at all. I really don't understand that at all. What about going back to the original point about inefficiencies? Could we not, as an industry, do more incentivization of efficiency? I know this more from a demolition point of view, but obviously it's in construction as well. We have the weighting of contracts, WEIGHTING. So if you are going to do the job sustainably, that gives you a tick in the box. That makes you more favourable. If you're going to employ local people, that adds to your weighting as well. Obviously, cost comes down to it. But would it not be better to put some weighting into efficiency? If you can guarantee that you will, make maximum use of the materials you have, you'll make maximum use of the equipment, and the equipment is clean and shiny and new and sustainable, and you do the same with the people, whether they're regardless of whether they are locally employed or they're your people from previous projects, but you incentivize, basically make it performance related. This project is going to cost £1 million. Okay, we will pay you 1.2 million if you hit all of your KPIs, if you hit all of your efficiency targets. If you don't, you get a bare $1 million. And you don't, there's no negotiations, there's no retentions, none of that nonsense. You fucked up, you get exactly what we agreed, not a penny more. Mick Norton says, close to me here in Wakefield, one of the biggest house builds in the M62 corridor is underway. On one part of the site, I've watched the same topsoil stockpile get relocated at least 6 times in the last 2 months, utilising ADTs, dozers, scrapers, and shovel loaders. They haven't got a bloody clue. How many times do you see that? How many times do you see that? Even things like, this is a real bugbear with me, so I know I've said it before, but even things like the location of a plant area. I'm trying to think of what the bit of the yard, the bit of a site where you store the plant, right? I've watched projects being put together, and you've got roads being put in and houses being put in, and they basically put the plant storage area in the middle of everything. So they've assembled all the plant here. They build a couple of houses, but now they've got to go and take all of that plant and all of the fencing and everything else, and they've now got to put it over there. They build a couple of houses, and actually that plant thing's a bit too far away. All of our tooling is in there, all of our lubricants are in there, so they move it again. How much does that cost in time, money, effort, just because of a lack of bloody foresight? And that the one there from Mick, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen that. It's literally, we'll put a pile over there. Well, yeah, it's kind of in the way. Put it over there. It's in the way again. Put it over there. Now it's too far away. Really? Dan Cullen, on the same point, I've seen muck shifted 9 times as they said it was too expensive to send off site. Gary Muirhead says, we are the same in Scotland. We've got a shipyard company in Greenock, makes 2 ferries for the Scottish Islands. The original cost was 97 million, but the final cost will be 351 million. Did they decide to make them out of platinum halfway through? See, I'm looking at this, and I listen. I know fuck all about shipbuilding, but if you take the million off, right? If somebody said, I don't know, your new pair of trousers are going to be 97 quid. Cool, okay. It's quite expensive for a pair of trousers. And then you get to the till and they say, it's £351, please. I mean, there are some amongst us, myself included, who might be tempted to punch him on the bloody ear roll. But I'm looking at that saying, hang on, you told me 97 quid, which was already expensive. You're now telling me 351 quid for a pair of trousers on your bike. No way is that happening. We're adding millions, we're adding 6 zeros on this, and nobody's saying, yeah, hang on a minute. Hang the fuck on, as my dad used to say. We're talking about a trebling of price. Steel has tripled in price over the last 10 years. But again, why is this not factored in? In demolition circles, these days you're as much a commodities trader as you are a demolition contractor. So when you're taking down a building, I'll have the bricks, I'll have the concrete, and crush that. I'll take the steel, I'll take, and you, as I say, you've already got in your head where those various elements are going to go. If the price of steel falls out of its arse, you basically stockpile that steel and you wait for it to go up, and then you sell it. Surely the same applies here. And again, bearing in mind, we're talking, I'm guessing, as we're talking about ferries for the Scottish Islands, I'm guessing this is public money. If that is the case, why did nobody have the foresight to buy the steel at a time when the price was right? Because steel has tripled in price over the last 10 years. I'm not going to argue with that as a statistic, but it's not a straight line. The price of steel will have done that over the course of the past decade. Why did somebody not wait until it did that to buy the steel for those ships? And why did whoever is going to be the eventual owner of those ships, why did they not say at the outset, we'll agree 97 million, but we're going to cap it at 100? If you can't afford to deliver on that, then we can't sign the deal. We seem as an industry and as a nation to just have blank checks. How much is it going to cost? 97 million. Oh, okay. 351 million. Oh, okay. Somebody mentioned earlier, what have we got there? Rough maths, 251 million quid. You could probably build a pretty damn good school for that. You'd struggle to build a hospital for it, but you'd probably build a maybe even 2 schools. You might get 2 schools out of 250 million. Instead of which it's been spunked, I think is the word I would use. Yeah. I don't, having talked it out, and we've talked this out a couple of times now, I don't honestly think we've necessarily moved it forward. All I would say is, when I used to speak to Neil Edwards on a regular basis, part of the reason that the Builders Conference did what it did was to eradicate inefficiency within the industry. Rather than people going off and off half-cocked, we're going to open a house building branch in Manchester. Well, the Builders Conference could tell you, actually, there's no house building going on in Manchester at the moment. That's not true, but they could tell you that because they've got the data to back it up. Don't open an office there, for crying out there, because there's no house building there. That's building inefficiency. We don't seem to take enough time and precautions to safeguard what we've got. And when you think about all of this writ large, I saw an expression today that I've never heard before, but I'm going to start using it because I think it's really good. The expression was, fish rots from the head. So we've had multiple, more than 4,500 insolvencies. We've got major companies like BAM and Lend-Lease making huge losses. I'm not saying they're going pop anytime soon, but all of that's the top. That's the upper echelons of the industry, and it is rotting. But that rot will percolate down. Now, where will it end up? With you guys. Ultimately, those insolvencies, those big financial losses, the financial losses will result unquestionably in redundancies somewhere along the line, and insolvencies will result in people just losing their jobs overnight. The top of the industry is failing the bottom, completely failing the bottom. And it doesn't seem like anybody seems to care that much about it. You get the likes of the Construction Leadership Council, Build UK, the National Federation of Demolition Contractors, get together, pat each other on the back on a job well done, when in actual fact, the thing is rotten to the core and could all come down like a house of cards. Think about Lend-Lease. For 10, 20 years, Lend-Lease has been one of the absolute stars of the UK construction industry. They're now very, very seriously considering saying, do you know what? We can't make the UK pay. We're going back whence we came. I think they're Australian, but they are literally toying with the idea of just calling a halt. At the same time, that construction in the UK is more expensive than anywhere else in the world. Something between those two things ain't quite right. And it will cost you, it will cost me, it will cost the nation. I think that will do us. I think I've probably took myself into a corner now. So yeah, we'll be back tomorrow. Back tomorrow for yet more of the same. I don't know what I'm going to babble on about tomorrow. I never know until I wake up, to be perfectly honest. But yes, we'll come back to that tomorrow. Another mystery machine. I already know what it is, and it's an old one tomorrow. And in terms of our Excavator World Cup, I can tell you that the match tomorrow will be Liebherr. Yeah, I feel for anyone going up against Liebherr, to be perfectly honest, but it'll be Liebherr against Sumitomo. Dan Cullen says, how come big bosses get bonuses of millions, but the working man gets nothing as we're making their money? Yeah, well, but I honestly think, I know there are, I've been to enough dues where people are arriving in Rolls Royces and Bentleys and stuff, yet claiming poverty, and I understand all of that. What I would say is, if you're talking about the major companies, the Lang O'Rourke's, the Sir Robert McAlpines, the Lend-Leases, the BAMs, the shareholders, who are the ultimate guardians here, they will only tolerate that so long. If you're paying a £1 million bonus to somebody at the same time that your dividend has either shrunk or disappeared, you've got yourself a problem. Let's have a look. Mick Norton says, compared to Victorians, modern day engineers and planners are just not as project savvy as their forebears, and unfortunately for the UK taxpayer, learn as they go. Order, counter order, disorder. Could have that written above my desk, actually. Because we aren't taking the risk. That is in answer to Dan Cullen. In some ways, though, you are, aren't you? In some ways, you are. If you were working for an employer, be it a little contractor, a plant hirer, a major contractor, a tier 1 contractor, your future livelihood hinges upon the decisions made by the people at the top. And if they are making shit decisions, which quite clearly some of them are, that will impact on you. So you are kind of taking a risk. Not as big, I grant you, and not as day to day, but you are taking a risk. And Chris Ford, this is getting in properly early. He's already guessed the mystery machine for tomorrow is a JCB 3C. It's not. And Dan Cullen rightly says, we're risking our lives on site every day. Yes. Doing jobs that they won't. Well said, Mr. Cullen. Yes. Well said. That'll do us. That's an hour and 8 minutes of this. Weird, right? But we aren't putting any money in first. You kind of are, or some kind of are. You know, if you're paying for your own training, some people are still paying for their own PPE, and I realise that's not the score anymore. You know, and you are putting your, you know, your petrol money and you know, you're putting, ultimately, you're putting your rent or your mortgage on the line to serve those that are potentially making some really, really shitty decisions. You kind of are. The money is the risk. Yeah, well, as I say, not to the same degree. But then if you extrapolate it out, you know, if there is somebody making decisions for a multi-million-pound company, yes, I understand the risk there. But if you extrapolate that out, there's 3 million people dependent upon those decisions. And they're only doing it for money. They're not doing it for the love of it. They're doing it for money. Dan Cullen says, we're putting time and effort in away from our families. Yeah. This is the socialist coming out of me, I think. That'll do us, I think. I'll see you again tomorrow for yet more of the same. Until then, everybody, please stay safe. Look after yourself. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. I didn't do that earlier. I need to sort out that end of the show. Kind of feel like it's a bit disjointed at the moment. I'll have a play with that this afternoon. But until tomorrow, I'll see you all then. Have a good day. And thanks for your company. Enjoyed it.